So welcome to Feedback That Fosters Growth. We're going to look at going from grading to guiding. Today's webinar is grounded in John Hattie's research, the visible learning research. It's going to highlight why feedback is one of the most powerful influences we have in education and learning today. It has an average effect size of 0.7, which is almost double the average effect size of 0.4. Meaning it is a very impactful strategy, educational influence that we can use. As instructors, this makes feedback not just part of what we do every day, but really a strategic lever to help accelerate student progress in learning and growth. So today we're going to focus on a few things. We're going to first look at the 3 questions that he's associated with feedback. We're going to look at some difference between grading and what they call feed-forward feedback. And we're going to look at ways that we can give actionable growth-focused feedback in the next 28 minutes. Are y'all ready? All right, as I always say, pull those seatbelts tight. It's going to be a fast and furious 30 minutes. This is another one of those webinars that is really dependent on your participation to make it successful as we get to learn with and from everyone on this call. So my name is Mandy Green. I am part of the professional services team here at GW. All we do is provide really great professional development, professional learning to teachers and instructors across the country. We like to do instructional design. We're also part of our company's customer onboarding and our training program as well. So with that, let's get started. So we're going to try a new tool today. I've never used this in a live webinar, so I have run through this and I practiced it, but it's going to be a new experience for all of us. We're going to use the Microsoft Whiteboard for our next activity. So in a moment, I will pop up the whiteboard and you will see what you see on the screen. You'll see 2 columns, one that has blue sticky notes and one that has orange sticky notes. To activate those sticky notes, you simply click on them. And you can click the little pencil tool, which is the bar far left. And you can type your response on there. You can also move the sticky notes around. I'm going to ask you to keep them in those columns, the blue column and the orange column. You'll notice that one is labeled I noticed and one is labeled I wondered, and that'll make sense in just a moment. So also when we get to the sticky notes, you're going to find at the bottom there's a menu or toolbar, I should say. The arrow button is how you can point and click. The hand, you can click on the hand button, which is the second one, and that's going to let you pan the whole page across. If you need additional sticky notes, you can grab those right from the sticky note icon. If you would like to heart or give a check mark to another person's comment, you can jump on that to leave a feedback or emotion reaction to their comment as well. Then, of course, at the bottom right on the whiteboard, you'll see a zoom in and zoom out, or you can pan the whole page over using the button on the far right. All right, so now that we know a little bit about the Microsoft Whiteboard tool and how we're going to click on a sticky note and type our response, let's look at what we're going to do on the whiteboard. So on the screen, you'll notice 2 images. So right now, I just want you to take about 15 seconds and pan the image on the right and the image on the left and see what you noticed about those images and what you wonder about those images. All right. Have you had time to review those 2 images? Have you thought about things that you noticed that you see in each image? Do you have a few questions or wonderings about each of those images? Okay, perfect. I'm now going to pop up the whiteboard. So let's cross our fingers. You know how it is. We've rehearsed this, but sometimes when you're live, things just go a little different. Let me pop it up for you. And of course, right now it's not going, is it? All right, this is like live webinars, right? Okay. We always have this concern when we do live events and try new tools, even though we have rehearsed them sometimes. Like I'm clicking the button, but it doesn't want to click. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Because as teachers and instructors, we always have plan B, correct? So in the chat box, when you look at that image on the left that just has the picture of the F, what do you notice about that picture? Type that in the chat box. And then when you look at the image on the right and you see the instructor and the student talking, tell us what you notice about those pictures. And so we already have some notices coming in. Thanks so much for that quick pivot. Things like the student's not doing very well. Easy to record a quick F. There's not a lot of feedback on the F paper, right? I noticed the big red pen. Absolutely, Christina, me too. Notice an F. The F feels final, no learning. Red ink is very noticeable. Review of the paper. They notice that there's a grade at the top, but it doesn't tell on the right. Yep, absolutely. Mark's saying that the red F is kind of scary. There doesn't seem to be any feedback on the left. On the right, it seems the teacher is explaining something about the assignment. Right, John? Okay, so now we're getting to it. Jen's talking about the F is just a grade, whereas the other picture, the instructor is explaining, talking to. Absolutely. Now, do you have any questions about these images? What questions or wonderings do you have about the image on the left and the image on the right? Type those questions in the chat. I'll give you just a moment. Yeah, the right. Yeah, the teacher is explaining and reviewing on the right. Absolutely. I'm wondering about the image on the right-hand side. Is the student going to get to redo the assignment or part of the assignment after that instructor feedback? Kimberly's wondering, how can we provide that feedback when courses are all online? Great point, Kimberly. Christina's wondering, is there something he does with all of the students or just for certain students? Yeah, that's a great wondering or question. Absolutely. So as you can see, you're all catching on to some themes, right? Do you see common theme words? The one on the left, you're saying it seems final, it seems harsh. The one on the right, there seems to be some type of conversation, talking about possibly improve their learning on the right. Absolutely. Thanks for making that adjustment and typing in the chat. Let's keep going. So when we get there, you notice several things. The first one, the comment F, that's evaluative feedback, right? It's judges performance, but really doesn't provide us any information. Like as the learner, there's nothing there that I can use to improve the next time I perform some type of task or answer questions. Whereas the one on the right is more descriptive and what we can call feed forward, because ideally we hope that he's naming a strength, right? Like your evidence in this paper is strong and kind of provides the next steps for that student or learner. Maybe it could be something like, explain how this supports your claim. This is the kind of feedback that actually moves learning forward. So by noticing these distinctions, you've already started to uncover the foundations of Hattie's feedback model, including the differences between evaluative and descriptive, as we've seen in these two images, and the idea that feed forward is guidance towards improvement. So you've also taken the first steps in understanding how feed forward can operate at different levels. It can operate at the task level, the process level, the self-regulation level, or at the self level. Now let's take this information and build on to the next one. So we're going to look at those four concepts: task, process, self-regulation, and self-feedback. So let's start with the first one, task feedback. This is the kind of feedback that tells us as learners whether we performed a task correctly. It is direct and often corrective. However, it's only the first level on its own. It really doesn't always lead to deeper learning. Next, we have the process. This type of feedback explains what the learner did to be successful and what strategies or strategic adjustments they can make. When we help our learners and our students really refine their process, we empower them to become more independent and efficient thinkers, which is what we want with that self-ownership of learning. Let's look at self-regulation feedback. This is the sweet spot according to Hattie's feedback research. This is when learners or our students can reflect on how they learn. They can create strategies, they can monitor their own progress, and they begin to own their growth. So then our jobs as educators, instructors, facilitators is to prompt them, not to necessarily solve all of their problems. And then the last one is what we're going to call self-feedback. So this is the least effective of all the feedback processes because it doesn't inform learning. It's something that you could say like, oh, you're smart. Oh, you did a good job. Whereas it feels supportive, and it can be, but it doesn't help our students and our learners understand what they did and what to do next in this process of learning. All right, did you get the 4 processes that we talked about? Task, process, self-regulation, and self-feedback. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper. So here are the 3 questions that are going to be our guiding questions today. They are, where am I going? How am I doing? And where to next? These are the backbone of effective feedback. So as you can probably guess, the where am I going helps our students and our learners understand the goal. Maybe it's your success criteria, so they know exactly what they're aiming for. The how am I doing question gives them a clear sense of their current progress in relationship to that goal or meeting that success criteria. And then the last question, where to next, offers a concrete and actionable step that they can take to improve. And so together, these questions start to shift feedback from a simple evaluation of past performance, like the F on the first image we saw, to a powerful guide to future growth, really helping our students and our learners see their path forward about learning progression. There are some different approaches we can take here. So let's look at the first 3. So each of these kind of have their own form and shape that they take. So evaluative feedback, things like grades, things like scores, or simple praise, they tell our students and our learners how they performed, but it doesn't help them get better. Then we have descriptive feedback, which focuses on what the learner actually did, naming strengths, naming areas for growth that is tied directly to a clear criteria. That kind of information is what's really going to help our learners find what they can use. And then we have feed forward, which is the top one. This is the strongest form of improvement-focused feedback because it takes our learners towards the next step. So instead of dwelling on what went wrong, it points them to the next step to support forward momentum in learning. All right, we're going to layer on one more. So we have the 4 types of feedback. We have our guiding questions. We have our approaches with evaluative, descriptive, feed forward. We're going to take it one more level. You ready? All right, so now we're going to look at some of the ingredients that make feedback effective. So first, let's look at timely. It's almost like we're looking at SMART goals, essentially. So timely feedback matters because learners can only change or adjust their performance while they're still in that learning process. So it loses its power if it's delivered too late. And so many times, even me as a teacher, like students have turned in work, and it's one of those weeks where I'm just tired. I have a lot going on after work at home. And so I'm like, I'll grade those over the weekend. Well, sometimes that feedback then is a whole week late after that learning took place, and we've already moved on to new topics. So in that case, my feedback from as an instructor to my students was not always timely. Then we can look at goal referenced feedback. So this ensures that our students, our learners, know exactly what target they're aiming for, right? Without that clear criteria, the feedback feels kind of vague or subjective. But if they have a goal and they know where they're headed, the feedback can align with that. Then we have actionable feedback. So this gives a specific next step so our students and our learners can take. It's something that's very concrete, right? The word actionable. It's concrete. They can try it immediately. Then, when timely, goal referenced, and actionable all come together, The feedback becomes what we call high impact. And this aligns with John Hattie's description as a major driver of accelerated learning. So this is really to help see that our students, it's not just what we say and when we say it and how we tie it to a learning goal. It's when it comes all together. That is what makes the change for our students. And also, as we're going, I have like 2 more slides where I'm going to talk before we jump back into some collaboration. If you have ideas, please put them in the chat, because this is just our time to learn with and from each other, right? So we all have really great educational experiences to share, so let's share them. All right, so now that we have this, let's layer on one more level. How can we deliver feedback? So as a new teacher, I always thought like my students would like take a test, answer some questions. I have no mark them right or wrong. There's my feedback. And then I started thinking, well, maybe I should put a few little notes on the side if I'm grading by hand. When I was in Google Classroom, maybe put a little comment. That was my feedback. And yes, those all work, but I could have been much more intentional about how I delivered my feedback and thought outside the box that I don't have to be the only one delivering feedback. So let's look at ways that we can deliver feedback, because the mode of the delivery can shape how useful or impactful that feedback is. And that's the piece I missed as an early teacher. So peer feedback, right? This empowers our students, each other, to learn from one another, kind of like how we're learning here. It helps them really internalize that success criteria, the goal, to know where they're going, because they can apply it to each other's work. It's kind of like us in the real world. We can give each other feedback and apply it to our roles in different perspectives, right? Then we have teacher clarity. So this strengthens the understanding of those expectations, because our students and our learners, they can't hit a target that they can't see or don't know about. So clarifying the next steps or the criteria becomes essential. Then we also have what's called in-lesson feedback. This is powerful because it happens in the moment. So it is timely, allowing that immediate correction or extension. And last, you'll find what we call post-lesson. While this is still valuable, it tends to be less influential because learners have moved on from that task. And it aligns directly with what I was saying when I would give a test or some type of project one week and then grade it over the weekend and give the feedback when they came back the next week. It wasn't as timely. It was post-lesson. It wasn't aligned what we were still talking about. So that was less influential on my students' learning. All right, how can we strengthen feedback? Because as educators, right, we want to give good feedback to our students, whether it's in the lab, whether it's in the classroom. We want them to take that content and those skills and continue to grow on that learning path and learning progression. So let's look at self-assessment first. So this really helps our students and our learners evaluate their own progress, right? So we're still talking about ownership of learning. It helps them compare their work to other criteria and hopefully identify gaps before we as the teacher can even step in. So when students can monitor and adjust their own learning, they build those self-regulation skills that are tied directly to long-term success. Also, another feedback behavior that can really strengthen this is goal setting. So when it's paired with this, when goal setting is paired with that self-assessment, it gives our students and our learners a clear direction, right? Like an anchor point for understanding, like, where am I going? Which is one of the questions from John Hattie's model. So when our students and our learners set or even co-set, maybe with another classmate, goals, feedback makes more sense. It starts to connect directly between what they're doing daily. This behavior starts to then shift learners from being just passive receivers of information to being more engaged in that learning process, right? Which is exactly what we want them to do. All right, I'm going to try to launch this one more time. And if it doesn't launch, it's okay. We can pivot and use the chat again. So I'm going to launch the whiteboard one more time. There are 3 columns. There are 3 questions. So where am I going? How am I doing? And where to next? There are some gray sticky notes. And I just want you to take those sticky notes and put them under which question of the feedback guiding questions they follow. Now, we're all going to be in there together, hopefully. So just be aware of your mouse is all I'm going to ask. Let's see if we can get it going this time. I might have to relaunch this. We'll see how it goes. Nope. I don't know what it just, I click it and it does nothing. It goes nowhere. All right. So let's do this. So I'm going to type in the chat one of the questions, such as, where am I going? And now I would love for you to put different types of feedback that you could give your students that would fall under where am I going? It can be descriptive feedback. It can be evaluative feedback. It can be a combination put together. So it might be things like something about maybe a safety requirement that they have in the lab. What type of feedback? And remember that there are no wrong answers in professional learning. And if you have another thought about feedback, you can put that in the chat right now too. So I'm also reading some of the previous chat messages where students can learn from their mistakes based on feedback. That's what Dr. Jeff Ulmer does. You know, Kelly's talking about, oh, thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that whiteboard. But let's see, what type of feedback would work for you? And it can be an example from earlier when we talked about the F and then the teacher talking with the students. Is there any type of where am I going feedback that a statement that might go? I'm also going to put the questions in there, and then you can. So those are our 3 guiding questions. Yeah, so Jeff's talking about, like, mine is like, how am I doing? Absolutely. Like if they missed questions and they're made available, then students can learn from their mistakes. Like, how am I doing? Right? Absolutely. Jennifer's talking about what you are expected to be learning. For example, today I told my class by the end of class, you should know the difference between fat soluble and water soluble vitamins. Exactly. Like, where are we going? We're going to be able to differentiate between those types of vitamins, right? Perfect. What other examples do you have of how am I doing? Where to next? A lot of in career and technical education, a lot of our skills-based lessons are really talking about where to next, right? So we have the knowledge and our skills are building on each other. I'll give you just a couple of moments and then we're going to keep going just for the sake of time for today, because we only have about 7.5 minutes left. But I do enjoy learning with and from y'all on this webinar as well. All right, I'm gonna keep going for the sake of time. If you see one in the chat, feel free to read it. You can also react to it. Monica's talking about where to next. Often my students may just need more one-on-one time in the lab, and we offer that. Exactly. And that's literally leading to where to next. And that's the type of feedback that we're providing for our students. All right, let's start to kind of debrief and pull all of this together, right? So we've talked about a lot of different types of feedback and how they start to work together. So what we're really seeing that there's some key distinctions that make feedback effective. So hopefully you're seeing that. Descriptive feedback gives our learners usable information, but that evaluative feedback like grades, praise, and simple labels are there, but without much help to help them grow. Sorry, I'm reading the chat and looking at the screen. But then when we start to look at the feed forward, that points our learners and our students to the next steps, whereas that summative feedback tends to look backwards. So we're trying to focus our feedback on looking forward. You may also know that there's different types of feedback, right? The task, the process, the self-regulation, and the self, or different levels of feedback, which really just reflect on the different depths of learning support, right? From correcting work to strengthening strategies to helping our students monitor their own progress. And finally, some of the strongest examples that we kind of shared here also, those that were timely, given during the lesson, those that were goal referenced, like tied to clear success criteria, and those that were actionable, that had that concrete next step, which are things that I see examples of in the chat right now. And together, those elements all pull together to represent the type of feedback that truly drives improvement and learning. All right, so I am going to pop up a poll. Let's cross our fingers. Okay, I see this one loading. All right, so you'll notice a question that's going to launch. It says, which feedback skill will you improve this week? So thinking about the type of feedback that we want to provide our students. Once you can select your answer, and then hit submit, and then you can see the results as well populate on your screen. So it looks like we're kind of like a third, a third, a third. So make feedback descriptive. Absolutely. We're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot when we use timely in-lesson feedback. Reflecting on my own work as a teacher, I wish I would have done that a lot more often. Encourage self-assessment and goal setting. Absolutely. That one and timely feedback seem to be the top ones. Awesome. So we have some goals that we can set for ourselves based on what type of feedback we want to use this next week and what we're going to improve. So hopefully you can take one of these ideas from today and apply it directly to your work this week, and hopefully see some great changes and improvements to help your students learn, because it's just about helping our students learn and use those high impactful strategies. I agree, Jeff. So sometimes the 100% online courses do present some challenges, especially thinking about that timely in-lesson feedback. So how do you provide that in-lesson feedback when you're asynchronous, maybe? Those bring on some new challenges, exactly. But hopefully these give you some starting points and some things to think about and points to ponder to move forward. So here's the deal. So today we talked about feedback, and we were grounded in John Hattie's research. We're going to have what we call the Educator's Edge, which is this webinar series. And today was the first one for 2026, and we focused on feedback. Every month, we're going to focus on one of the different educational influences from his research and how it applies to us as instructors. So next month, Stronger Together, Building Collective Efficacy is going to explore some more influential factors on student achievement, such as teacher efficacy. This one is amazing. So feedback had a 0.7 effect size, which is almost double the average effect size. Teacher efficacy has a 1.5 effect size, which is almost 4 times the average effect size. That means that while the most effective strategies yield about a year's progress, collective efficacy produces more than 3 additional years of learning in a single year, outperforming high impact practices like feedback today, outperforming classroom management, which only has a 0.5 effect size. So there's a substantial amount of research that has gone into the effects and impacts of teacher efficacy. So we're going to look at that. The power of this really lies in that shared belief among educators, us, that together we can meaningfully shape student outcomes. Belief that those beliefs become exponentially impactful, especially when paired with additional evidence-driven collaboration and instructional actions. So if you'd like, join us next month on March 3rd, 2 p.m. Central Time. We're going to talk about teacher efficacy. And every month, like I said, we're going to look at a different educational influence from John Hattie, and all of this is grounded in research. Also at GW, we always like to make sure we're making these better. So we would love for you to provide feedback on our feedback form, to share with us how this session was for you, how it's going to impact your instruction and your teaching, because we want to make sure that they are very valuable to you and impact exactly what you're doing in the classroom. So leave us some feedback for that. We hope to see you next month on March 3rd. I'm sure there'll be another email going out about that. You'll also see it on the GW social media pages. You will receive a follow-up email today from today's webinar that will have the PowerPoint, the recording, a certificate of attendance, and some additional research for your reading leisure attached. And so we hope to see you again in March. Have a great afternoon, and we will see you soon.